And then we have Dian versus Treepipit. Treepipit brought 3 off-meta decks, if I recall correctly, and Dian brought also 3 pretty off-meta decks. We will get to see what those decks look like. I think the Germany is Baby combo again. Uh, Japan is Feigned Retreat aggro, and the US, I forget if it's US ramp or US midrange. For Treepipit, I think the Soviets, I don't remember exactly what it is, so I'm not going to bother guessing. But we're about to see a pretty off-meta decks. So game 1, Treepipit has his Britain-Japan pin deck. You can see 2 Matildas AA gun. This is a deck essentially revolves around the tempo of cards like Sonia and Surprise Attack. And then on the other side of the board, Dian is playing incredibly heavy US Italy ramp. So Pact of Steel, just for additional card draw because it's going to draw you 3 to 4 cards. He has Pershing. I think he has Super Fortress, if I remember correctly. Chooses to keep the 101st. It's very interesting to me. I feel like he would rather just keep Bologna and then full mulligan for ramp. Treepipit keeps 1 Matilda, mulligans away the other 3 cards. Also very interesting. I feel like I would have considered keeping research and sending back Matilda and then trying to win off synthetic rubber. Because I think the value of synthetic rubber might be the best way you win this game. Like, especially going second. Your opponent is almost certainly going to have more threats than you have removal. And from Dian's perspective, I'd keep Bologna, send back everything else. Treepipit has a fairly unfortunate hand. Dian just kind of gets the all-unit start. He doesn't have ramp, which is unfortunate for a ramp deck, but he does have Fiat into Bologna into Bologna. So this Fiat would actually just get pinned. I don't think it's worth playing. I would just pass. But also passing could potentially be holding up air defense. I don't know if that's in his deck or not, but here I like just passing. Plays Fiat, draws Sonia. This is a fairly simple turn. Pin the plane, play the only playable card. Simple turn from Dian, play Bologna. Now Treepipit has a interesting situation. If he plays Matilda, the Fiat can attack and the Sonia almost certainly dies. If he pins the Fiat, he can't do anything else. Like, he could pin the Fiat and then trade the Sonia, but that seems like just an unnecessary throwing away of options. And again, this is sort of why I would have liked to see him keep research, because if he just played 3k research here, get synthetic rubber in hand, threatening to make this AA gun a 7/7 artillery, I think that would be quite beneficial for him. Dian, he has a lot of options here. His hand is just so incredibly better than his opponent's. He could play Quartermasters here to set up for War Bonds. He currently has 7 cards in hand, goes to 6 with Quartermasters, draws 8, 9. Actually, no, he couldn't, because he would overdraw if he plays Quartermasters. So here, I guess it's between second Bologna or move up. Move up Mare Nostrum seems like a terrible play to me. Because if this... Okay, actually, Mare Nostrum's the Fiat. That's quite interesting. Not a huge fan of this play. Still. I think I would have preferred to just play second Bologna pass. So the problem with this play is if Treepipit has a way to pin the Bologna, it dies instantly to the Sonia because it's now no longer protected by the Fiat. Giving the Fiat 1 and more health keeps it alive an extra turn. but at the same time, if it's getting attacked, it's going to be by the artillery. So the difference between the artillery killing it or the artillery pinning it at 1 is very, very small. Like, it's essentially next to nothing, especially if you are moving the Bologna up. You're no longer protecting anything in the support line with this fighter being alive. So, very strange to me. Like, Mare Nostrum on the Bologna move up would be even worse, because at that point you're just, like, trying to throw the game, but I'm not a huge fan of this play. I think I would have just preferred to see Bologna make sure absolutely nothing gets through to your headquarters until you play strategic bombing and win the game. Fortunately for him, though, Treepipit has a very awkward hand. Probably just pin the Fiat and play Matilda. I think this Fiat needs to get pinned. I don't think you can allow him to heal 6. I guess you could Sexton the Fiat. That seems like a pretty early use of Sexton, though. I just like playing down Matilda, pinning the Fiat. But again, it's a very unfortunate hand for Treepipit. And that's exactly what he does, Matilda pin. Here, Dian. I would just play Bologna, kill the Sonia. Yeah, you have strategic bombing upcoming, but you don't want the Sonia to get a free kill on anything. If you just play War Bonds, you're not really going to need the extra credits. And Treepipit finds research, which in general is good, but currently not great. Pinning the Fiat is good, and it's correct to attack the Bologna. Like, this is absolutely correct. It keeps your artillery alive. Unfortunately, very, very unfortunately for him, Dian has the on-curve strategic bombing, which is going to kill both of these units and put Treepipit back to 5 credits. And this is just easiest strategic bombing turn. Now the question is, what does Treepipit do? Probably play Matilda Honey. And then set up for the HMS bombers being able to clear something up. Plays on curve. Not a huge fan of the Sexton. I feel like you want to Sexton something that's like actually more of a pressing threat. I think I'd like Matilda Honey. The benefit of Matilda Honey is if he trades the 3-4 into the Honey, it lets you do HMS Illustrious, kill the 3-4, and then Matilda into the 2-3-7 if it moves up to pin it and keep your bombers alive, and then potentially win the game with the 7-7 bomber on the following turn. And also the benefit of doing that is you go pretty wide. Decides to just add Synthetic Rubber to hand. So with this, he can do HMS Illustrious, Synthetic Rubber, essentially nuke something for 7. But this gives Dian the perfect opportunity. Play War Bonds, move up the Bologna Regiment. And that's exactly what he does. Pretty simple turn. Treepipit can he can do a few things here. He could go for the HMS Illustrious, Synthetic Rubber, get a 7-7 bomber, and go face. Pin one of the units, and then essentially just pray you can rush your opponent down in 2 turns. Very risky play. I don't think he's at that point in the game yet. He could do HMS Illustrious, Synthetic Rubber, kill the 3-7, and then pin the 3-4. And then hope your opponent can't kill the 7-7 and it lives another turn. If he doesn't want to go for that yet, he could do Honey Sexton. He could do Matilda Honey. Between all of these plays, I think the best one is HMS Illustrious, synthetic rubber, kill the 3/7, and then use surprise attack to pin the 3/4. Actually, don't use surprise attack because Dian wouldn't have enough credits to do attack B17 regardless. And if he has Dechima, he has Lion for a day, he has Avenger, he has high altitude bombing. All of these things are going to die regardless. So, yeah, actually, I like this. Play with the honey. Of course, if Dian has, like, something crazy like Stars and Stripes Mary Nostrum here, that would be brutal. Dian has a few options here. This 7/7 bomber is by far the largest thing in Treepipit's entire deck. So he could just throw it Lion for a day now, kill the other bomber. That's essentially his best play. This Lion for a day needs to come out, I think, on the 7/7. And then at that point, you can really do anything. You can do Mare Nostrum on Bologna, kill the honey. Mare Nostrum on Bologna, kill the bomber. Mare Nostrum, hit air defense Fiat. Mare Nostrum, hit Fiat. I think all of these plays are essentially equal. I guess playing Fiat, hitting the honey would be worst case scenario because you're just playing into carpet bombing unnecessarily. Or hit the bomber Fiat, not Mare Nostrum. But this Lion for a day comes out. And I think this bomber needs to die. Like, you don't really care about your opponent's health total. Interesting. I do not like this play at all. Your opponent knows you have air defense in your deck. With just how you choose to go about this turn, you're telegraphing very hard that you have air defense. Like, for example, Treepipit could just do carpet bombing, move up honey. Or Treepipit could do attack honey first, and then do attack with the bomber Sexton. Like, there's tons of ways to get punished. It's very, very hard by this line from Dian. I think, in general, trying to, like, get a best case scenario situation out of a countermeasure is really bad if you're already ahead in the game. Like, if you're already ahead in the game, just use the cards that you know the effect they will have to stay ahead. And then maybe if you're like super far behind, you go for maybe my opponent forgets about this card and I can come back in the game with this countermeasure. And also, if you're in an open deckless tournament where your opponent is 100% certain that that countermeasure is in your deck, this is a terrible play. I just don't understand why he wouldn't Lion for a day the 7/7. Like, if there was a way you lose this game, it is right here. Like, if Treepipit has, I don't know, Monty trigger the air defense with honey, go face. Treepipit goes for the carpet bombing and attacks directly into the air defense. So, just to be clear, just because the air defense worked does not mean Dian's play was correct. Dian's play was still a pretty big misplay, in my opinion. And the question is Treepipit aware of air defense and is making the conscious decision, I need to play as if he doesn't have it to win? Or did he just forget about the card and attack face because he has 1 credit left over? If it's the first case, obviously that's a mistake. If it's the second case, obviously that's a mistake because he just forgot about a card in his opponent's deck and didn't play around it. If it's the first case, I think I would just disagree with him. I don't think he is yet in the position where he needs to take this risk. I think you can just move up the honey and assume your opponent doesn't have a way of killing this bomber other than air defense, since he didn't kill it last turn. So either way, I think this is a very big mistake by Dian, but then a very big mistake by Treepipit, which allows Dian to go unpunished for his mistake. So here, pretty easy play, just quartermasters, draw. Not sure why he doesn't draw first. Chooses to not draw. I guess he's greeding out for double quartermasters. In which case, not sure why he didn't just do like Fiat Mare Nostrum, for example. Or even just Decima. Like Fiat Decima into quartermaster, draw 4. I think I would have preferred that play. This play just sort of seems weird to me. Treepipit. He can kill any card of his choice if he so chooses with the double surprise attack or Sexton surprise attack. I think this quartermaster needs to die if you Treepipit. I also think you want to get as many units on the board as possible to get around random destruction effects. I would consider Type 94. I guess you can't kill a Quartermasters this turn. I would do Type 94, Sexton the Fiat, surprise attack the Fiat, move up Honey. That appears to be what he's going for. Oh, and of course you can play Sonya in there too. Type 94, surprise attack, Sonya, move up Honey. Just get as many units onto the board as possible. This is a pretty big mistake. Uses the okay. He realizes that. Uses the surprise attack. Dian knows it's in hand. Plays the Sonya. Doesn't move up Honey. I don't know if Dian has Dyson Stripes in his deck. I don't know if he has Hellcat in his deck. I would assume he runs one of those. Just draws 2. And Decima on. Probably Sexton. Your opponent has to spend a card to pin a unit for Sonya to work, whereas a 3-4 artillery is just a 3-4 artillery. Lend-Lease. I would do Albacore, Sonya to kill the Quartermasters. And then you can hold up the whatever the countermeasure is called. And at this point, Treepipit's deck is all about tempo, but the problem is his opponent has 14 credits and massive units. And these little, 1-1s, 1-2s, and 2-3s are not going to win the game against 10-10 heal 10 bombers. Here, Dian has a couple options. His best play is probably just to go for nukes. I don't remember if Treepipit runs Ultra or not, but you have Mare Nostrum, you have Decima, you have Lion for a day, you can deal with anything scary that comes out. He can go 3-6 and then play. Oh, actually, that's actually really good for Dian. He can do 3-6. So he gets the 9 cost in hand, and then he can play the War Machine to go up to 15 credits, which means on the next turn he can do 9 cost, add nukes to hand, and then play 1 nuke. Of course, if Treepipit has Ultra in deck, that play gets a lot more riskier, because obviously you can be put in the spot where you need to play Research, potentially into an Ultra. Goes for 3, goes for 6. He should play War Machine here to put him up to 15. He does. And I guess you could even consider moving up Mare Nostrum. I think that's a bit much. I don't think you need to. You're nuking the board anyways, just pass. So you want to put as much. Well, no, you know the board's getting entirely wiped next turn, so you don't want to put any pressure onto this board. Actually, um, just double hit with the bomber, move up honey, kill with honey, hit face. That's 4 credits. You can hold up the countermeasure, and yeah, just pass. uh, and then win off the tempo of your other cards. Oh no, he didn't do the math. He, very unfortunately for Treepipit, he does not realize that Dian can play nukes next turn. So actually, what he could do here, in this situation, if he runs Ultra in the deck, I don't remember if he does or not, but if he runs Ultra in the deck, he can just move up, double Bomber, Honey, into it, hit face, pass with 4 credits. So Dian has to play something other than nukes to play around Ultra, and then that leaves all of these units on board, and you can probably get more value out of the Sonya. Or he just goes for nukes, he nukes the board anyways, and then you just go on with your life. Very, very, very terrible play. Very massive mistake. Like, I should say that this is very clearly a mistake. I think Treepipit does not realize that Dian can play nukes next turn. I think Treepipit thinks he has an extra turn, so he floods the board and tries to just deal as much damage as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, 9 plus 6 is in fact 15, and Dian can nuke the entire board. Manhattan clears everything. He's down an extra surprise attack. He's down a Cromwell. I mean, it's an okay draw, I guess. You can do Comet Matilda type 94. Hold up the countermeasure. Start rebuilding the board. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, of course, he has the nuke in hand. You do not want to play Matilda. Well, I think I would have preferred playing Matilda over the Comet. Like, I think you might need this. It's not going to matter. Dian correctly recognizes that he does not need to play the nuke if he can just kill the Comet. Churchill here is pretty good. Well, okay. I take that back. Churchill here is depressing because it retreats Decima, which just immediately comes down. Every single play here Treepipit has is depressing. I guess you can do Naval Operation, Surprise Attack, kill Decima, play Churchill, hit face. That way Decima's gone. Nukes don't kill Churchill. The Quartermaster gets returned to hand. You still have second Surprise Attack in hand. Of course, it's just going to get punished by line for a day if he does that. But I don't really see a better play. Like, I think throwing out double Surprise Attack just means you're going to lose as soon as a bomber hits the board. Draws last. Pretty big mistake. Here, Dian, honestly, yeah, Seaborn Invasion is just the best play. I think I would start with Pact of Steel. You're running slightly low on cards, so you can draw. Even if your opponent gets any draw out of it, they're 2 draws from milling. And, like, you're probably going to end up Seaborn Invasion anyways. Gets the Blitz guy, too. Could probably just do Mare Nostrum attack this turn. Guess it dies to Carpet Bombing. He's going for the B-29 Super Fortress play. Here, Treepipit, what can he do? He could Tenzan, kill the 4/3, albacore, trade, kill the 2/2. That's 7. Can get a Matilda down while doing that. But again, there's this Manhattan Project in hand. Treepipit is just so lost, because if he doesn't build a board, his units just get picked off one by one. And if he does build a board, he dies immediately. Well, like, the board dies immediately to these nukes. Guess you could do albacore, trade, Matilda. You have 2 units on board. Your opponent might nuke at 2 units. And then you still have Matilda, Churchill, Honey, Tenzan after nukes. That might be your best outcome. And here you just have to play Matilda and, like, pray he nukes this board. Maybe you even throw out Honey, just to increase the odds he plays the nuke. Because I think at this point you want him to play the nuke so that you no longer have this just, like, hanging over your head. Yeah, probably correct to hold back the Honey. Dian has a few different plays. He could just, like, pushing us the very real risk of dying immediately. Pact of Steel to draw. Okay, not draw everything. Loses Jasko. Loses Carpet Bombing to B17. So at this point, Dian can do whatever the hell he wants. He cannot lose this game. Double B17, Pershing, Super Fortress. Treepipit can flood the board with Honey, Cromwell, Matilda. I guess you could Churchill here if you really want. No, I think you need the Cromwell Honey. No, you need to go for Cromwell Honey here. And the reason for that is you need your opponent to play, like, for example, you need to do Matilda, Cromwell, Honey. Your opponent goes Persian face, and then you do Naval Power, Tenzan, and then you hit face for 7 with Cromwell and Honey combined. You drop your opponent to 11, your opponent lying for a days the Cromwell, and then you win off of Tenzan, Honey, Matilda. Like, your avenue to victory is essentially like one line, and it's your opponent has exclusively ramp in hand. Dian has several plays here. Gets the line for a day out just because he can. Like, it's probably the only unit in Treepipit's deck that has 4 more attack naturally. B17 to clear up the Matilda, and doesn't play Catalina, interestingly. He doesn't have to because he's setting up lethal with Pershing anyways. Catalina has lethal through naval power, assuming they don't both get pinned. I guess his worry is Catalina getting pinned over and over and over, forcing him to mill through his entire deck and then losing on fatigue. But he's also has more cards in deck left than Treepipit does. Honey, naval power, Tenzan. You need to play the Tenzan. Here he can just do Avenger B17. He could even just do Pershing hit face. Like, it would be the worst possible play, but it would still win. Treepipit is essentially just out of units. His opponent still has 18 health. There's a Mary Nostrum in hand. And Treepipit throws in the towel. Heavily disfavored matchup, but I think he made several key mistakes throughout the game and didn't press a potential advantage. Into game 2, he brings the pin deck again into Dian's Feigned Retreat Jaguar list. And this is interesting. I think Treepipit should be heavily favored in this. He runs a lot of AoEs, a lot of pins, and a lot of cheap heals. He should be fairly heavily favored in this matchup. If we see what he keeps Type 94, keeps Naval Operation, HMS, AA Gun. This mulligan is perfect. This hand looks quite perfect. If we look at Dian's side of things, Shiden's terrible, Sendai's terrible. You shouldn't keep Sendai. Keeping Type 94 isn't bad. Knowing how disfavored you are in this matchup, I would actually mulligan for cavalries and bicycles, and then just hope you're able to get an insane start that you just win off of before your opponent can reach the credits to play Naval Operation. So, keeping both 1-drops I think is fine. If I was playing like a random game on ladder, I would probably keep both 1-drops, or at least the Type 94. But knowing specifically what your opponent's against, I think a full mulligan here, and hoping for just an absolutely crazy hand could be the play. Because Treepipit does not run guards, so gets back to probably the two best cards in his entire deck. Maybe Bicycle is slightly better than Cavalry. But Dion's hand is absolutely insane. So, play the Infantry to set up 35T. Play Type 94. 35T, hit the 1-1, hit face with Cavalry. Very standard stuff. Play the AA Gun. These turns are very fast back and forth. And that is an insane draw. He can do Type 93, 35T, trade in the damaged 35T to play around Naval Operation, and then go face for 6. He could even go face for 9, and just drop his opponent to 9 and say, I win the game unless you have Naval Operation. I think between those, I prefer killing the artillery with the damaged tank. Or even better, I think killing the artillery with the cavalry regiment is slightly better in case your opponent does retreat in the future. $35T goes up, trades the damaged tank, hits face. Here, very easy naval operation for Treepipit. Yep. It looks like Dion's in a very losing position, especially with this MI5. Just do a key to move up Type 94. You can't play around any more board clears. Here, HMS killed the tank, like the 35T in the front line. Very easy play. Get units on board, lower the amount of damage you can take. And here, quite unfortunately, quite sad to see, Treepipit makes the absolute greatest blunder of the entire tournament. And if I recall correctly, he plays MI5 here. He does not play the HMS Illustrious. Oh, sorry, that's even worse than playing the MI5. This play is mind-bogglingly terrible. So, this turn, you're facing down 5 damage on board. You're at 12 health. If your opponent draws like a Type 93 or a third 35T, it's very quickly to be very, very easily facing 2-turn lethal. So, you have 3 plays this turn. You have 3 plays this turn. You can do HMS Illustrious, take out the 35T. Your opponent now only has 3 damage on board and has to consider the possibility of putting that 3 damage into one of these bombers and not your headquarters. Which, obviously, you would appreciate, because if you can live to turn 7, you carpet bomb and win the game. So that's by far the best play. I think that's the play that anyone in this situation immediately thinks of. We even saw Treepipit at the very start of his turn. He went to play HMS Illustrious, and then decided to think some more. The second play you could do would be MI5, pin one of the units. You see your opponent's on 2 cards in hand. One of them is this surprise attack, and you're like, next turn I can do HMS attack twice. So this turn I will pin, only take 3 damage, make sure he only has 1 card in hand, and then next turn I do HMS Illustrious, kill 2 units. Slightly worse play, because you're letting yourself take more damage and you're taking longer to kill these units. But on the plus side, you get an MI5 out, so your opponent is less likely to top deck anything. The third, and just mind-bogglingly terrible play you could make, is to play Matilda, which is 4 credits, does absolutely nothing. You know your opponent has a surprise attack in hand, which they can just play to pin Matilda to make sure Matilda does absolutely nothing. So you're taking the full 5 damage. Plus you're spending 4 credits on something that does nothing this turn and you know will do nothing next turn. And let's just assume that Matilda doesn't get pinned. Treepipit's follow-up turn would be HMS Illustrious double attack. So he wouldn't even be attacking with the Matilda next turn, even if it doesn't get pinned. So this is essentially maximizing the damage you take this turn, maximizing the number of cards your opponent is going to have access to. And he spent the entire turn on this play. Obviously he was thinking about something. We were not. I don't see it. I do not see it. I could see the argument for keeping the surprise attack in hand. Maybe you're worried your opponent plays Kiyo Shiden, and you need to be able to pin it. But, again, that's just why it's so clearly obvious you'd go for HMS Illustrious, kill the tank. But I'm not going to harp on too much about this play, because it is just the play that immediately loses him the game. Dian now can choose between Sendai or surprise attack. Treepipit has no guards. So Sendai, best case scenario would be to play on a honey to prevent healing. I actually do prefer surprise attack to Sendai in this situation. Now the HMS Illustrious comes out after taking the 5 damage. Akita unfortunately goes face, putting Treepipit to 5. Dian top decks type 93. At this point, you just have to go all face. Pin one of the bombers, cavalry up, Sendai up, type 93 up. I think Dian should have played cavalry last turn, because you're in a situation where if your opponent plays second naval operation, you lose. If your opponent plays shelling, you lose. So why not get another unit to the front line? Like, for example, if he had played cavalry last turn instead of surprise attack, he would have just won already. Tosses everything to the front line. Treepipit's 1 turn off playing this carpet bombing. He can pin 2 units. Like, he can do type 93, surprise attack, and then kill the either of these units. Type 93 or the type 94. Doesn't really matter because he's dead to bombing raid, desperate measures, 35T. Just those cards, really. So Dian has 3 top decks for lethal. Obviously, Meteor Regiment would be the nail in the coffin. Top decks the third 35T. So, got very, very lucky this game. But also, Treepipit just completely threw away his chances. regardless of how lucky Dian got, Treepipit would have won this game easily 98% of the time going forward if he had just played HMS Illustrious Attack on turn 4 instead of the Matilda. And with that, Dian gets a fairly well-deserved 2-0 over Treepipit, and we get this semifinals. Myself versus Kolbasnik, Dian versus John PX. And I don't think this top 4 surprises anyone. Myself, Kolbasnik, John PX, all regulars in OCC and Opens. Dian, this is his second tournament, but he won the month before.